Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Well, today I want to talk about, things that you can prep, put aside with the intent of using it to barter with. I know that this is a subject that preppers talk about all the time. And a lot of people in the back of their minds, they're like, I don't know if that's ever going to happen. I mean, I can only imagine the only way that we could get to the point that we would actually be bartering different items instead of using cash would be in an absolute, complete, apocalyptic, Mad Max scenario. But folks, it doesn't take that kind of scenario to get to the point of bartering. In fact, in a lot of areas across America, bartering's done already. Right here in my local area, it's actually pretty common for people to barter and trade goods and skills for things. It's just still a pretty normal thing. And the way our economy is going, the way the value of the dollar is going, and very much has a lot to do with it, how they're pushing for a digital currency to where the only way that you can transact anything is by having this digital currency, this very intrusive big brother that's going to monitor everything you do and everywhere you go and everything that you purchase. So this possibility of bartering with each other becomes a much more likely scenario. So I want to talk about that today. I'm going to show you a few items, and the items that I'm showing you are just examples, because my goodness, it would take a crazy long video to show you all the different things that you can barter. We're going to show you that, but I also want to talk to you just about how to do it and some of the safety things of it. Number one, when you're bartering, you got to realize you're bartering, it can be with different people. It can be with someone kind of within your circle, part of your community, someone that you trust already. And you're just, swapping out something that you have for them. And in that kind of scenario, it's pretty much safe. At least I would hope that it would be completely a safe trading scenario. So you might barter different items with that person because, it's someone that you trust. Then there may be bartering within kind of the greater community, bartering areas. We already have farmers markets and swap meets and things like that throughout the country, especially in rural parts of America. And so this idea of type of a swap meet being formed where it's just bartering, where people bring their goods and they trade them with each other. That's a little bit, that's still somewhat safe. It's kind of in a controlled environment. And then there's bartering with people that you either don't know very well or you may not know at all. And so in that scenario, you have to be definitely more defensive, and you would probably only be willing to barter certain items with them. When you're bartering, especially as things get worse, especially as the world kind of collapses around us, you want to make sure that you're not giving away too much of your of what you have. You don't want them to know that you have an overabundance of this item or several items, that you have prepped up really well and you have this big storehouse full of goods, and that's why you're willing to barter. You don't want that to be known. You want it to come across that you're just like everyone else. You're just out there trying to survive, and you just happen to have a few things that you're willing to part with the hopes of getting some things that you really need. That's it. We're not letting them know anything. Because if word starts to get around, it could very possibly turn against you, and the wrong person could hear it. Even the person that you're bartering with could certainly come back later and try to take everything that you have by force. So we have to be careful about that. And when we're bartering, I would recommend only using small quantities of what you're bartering. For instance, you don't want to walk in with a big bulk bag of seeds. You walk in with a few of these, and then that's it. Just a small amounts of items is the first thing that you want to do. It's not really advisable to do bartering alone, especially as the world continues to spiral out of control. Right now, if I barter and I trade and do some horse trading with my neighbor down the road, that's one thing, and that's okay. But as things in the world and the rule of law starts to decay in the country, you don't want to do it alone. And if you have to go in alone, you want to have someone watching. You want to have someone, where they can see and hear what's going on in case you need backup, in case things start to go downhill. And those are the more worst case scenarios. And that's just some tips to remember. Package things small. Don't go it alone. Try to do it as best as you can, only to do bartering with people that you at least have some kind of relationship with, that you know a little bit. Doing that kind of stuff with complete strangers could end up being a bad deal, and so we want to try to avoid that if at all possible. One of the things that we can barter is our skills. And as much as I'll show you some of these items here, and we can talk about others, learning to do something that you can either trade your skill or you can trade the product of your skill is much better than acquiring things now. Because you're acquiring them now to set aside for bartering, and that's costing you money out of your pocket. And if you just develop a skill or the ability to do something that you can turn that into bartering, that's going to be better for you. So, if you know how to sew, if you know how to crochet, make a quilt, if you know how to, take care of animals, if you know how to, grow in the garden, maybe you know how to make moonshine, and have the equipment to do that. Growing tobacco, things like that. Just the food that you have, eggs, different things, certain skills, medicinal skills, medical skills. These are all very valuable. The ability to fix and repair things and to build things. These are all very valuable things that in the future, they are valuable now. But as things start to kind of spiral out of control, they're going to become very valuable. So remember that and work on developing those skills. As far as what are you supposed to be putting back now? Well, I'll be honest with you. There's not a whole lot of things that I have specific intent and that I purchase for no other reason than to just put them back. There are a few things, but most things, it's just part of what we prep. And that's what a lot of people ask all the time is, well, what are we supposed to be buying and putting back now with the intent of using it as a bartering tool? Well, pretty much anything that you're already prepping. If this is stuff that you're putting aside because you feel that you're going to have to use it or you're going to need it later on, that's a good item. And so just make sure you have enough put back so that you have enough for yourself and maybe a little bit extra to trade with. And that's usually how I do it. There may be a few items occasionally that I put aside specifically for that. And one would be alcohol, especially like the little small bottles and stuff. It's not something that I drink. I don't really prefer hard alcohols, but I purchase them. I purchase them and I put them aside, and I've also learned how to make it. So that's one example of that. The other things, like I said, you're just purchasing things that you normally need. Food. I mean, this is stuff that you're going to purchase anyways. And so to have enough set aside to say, okay, I'm willing to part with that much of that item for bartering is a good thing. Some of the items to think of, canned food, but canned food that's like ready to eat out of the can, something like SpaghettiOs and soups that are ready to just eat out of the can. Are really good because you don't know what condition the people are that's purchasing it. They may be really, really desperate, and they just need something that they can eat right away. Along with food, in the food category, stuff like spices and seasonings, salts, of course. Every apocalyptic movie ever made talks about the value of salt, and that's true. Salt is valuable. In fact, there's been a lot of studies on the migration of human migration across the planet due to tracing, following salt mines and salt veins. There's been wars fought over it. It's a very valuable commodity, and today it doesn't seem valuable because we have an overabundance of it. But if that stops, it could become very valuable again. And it's not just for seasoning; it's mostly for preservation. With salt, you can preserve just about any kind of food if you have enough salt. So salt, seasonings, foods that are easy to eat, easy to carry, easy to prepare, drink stuff, individual tea bags, small amounts of coffee. You don't want to come in if someone says, hey, do you have coffee? And you're like, oh yeah, I've got coffee. And you come in and you bring in your big, 3-pound thing of coffee or whatever. You don't want to do that. If coffee is going to be something that you barter, have a small amounts set aside so that you can bring those out. And that brings me to another point, is when you're doing this, obviously, if you're going to a meeting place to barter with, it's different. But if people are coming to you, you don't want to take them into your barn or your basement or wherever it is that you have all your stuff and say, yeah, here, let's go through things. You want to have things kind of set aside and you bring out to them. You certainly don't want them to have access to see what you have. Some of the things that would work: tools, old tools, knives, things like that you pick up maybe at a yard sale or swap meet or flea market. You don't want necessarily super junky stuff, and these are old hickory knives, some old hickory knives. Anytime I find them at yard sales and stuff, I typically buy them because the steel is excellent. Stuff like that that you can just set aside in a box, and if someone is needing them, they work well. One of the big ones that people talk about all the time is garden seeds, and that is a good one to barter with. What I typically do is, and many of you have these all over, dollar stores, Dollar General store, those type of places, they sell them, and they usually sell them pretty cheap. And then a lot of times at the end of the season, at the end of the growing season, they'll put them on sale, and I've purchased them anywhere from a dime to a quarter a bag. And usually I'll buy up a bunch of those and store them with my seeds, but those are the ones that I'm going to use because I typically don't grow stuff from the seeds that I buy at the dollar store because I like a little bit better. You can also use stuff that you've collected on your own seeds, so that works. Another big one is personal hygiene items. Toothbrushes. Man, people are going to want a toothbrush. Soaps, shampoos, mouthwashes, feminine hygiene items. That is something that us guys may not think about. I'm sure your wives, your better halves do, but certainly have that stuff. Now, especially with the personal hygiene and stuff, one of the things I like to do, as you can see in this small box here, is get the travel size stuff. And a store that I've mentioned on here several times, and many of you have stores like this in your area, where it's a discount grocery store where they purchase like insurance salvage type grocery items. Maybe the pallet was damaged and they buy the whole pallet and they sell it really cheap. Maybe stuff is expired or near expiration date, that kind of store. A lot of times the one that we go to, some of the ones that we go to, they'll have big bins of those travel not samples, but the travel size mouthwash and toothpaste and soaps and shampoos and stuff like that. And if they're really cheap, which the other day, the one we went to had a bunch of these that were really cheap, we buy it. And we put those back, and they're great for bartering. They're great for other things. They're great to put in a bug out bag. They're great to put in a your vehicle survival box and all that kind of stuff. And so they're already small packaged, and they work great for that. So we look for that kind of stuff. Batteries are always going to be a hot item, and so you can do that. First aid stuff, obviously, you don't want to go crazy giving away too much, but stuff like little bandages and gauze and stuff like that's pretty cheap. Doesn't hurt to buy up a little extra than what you had intended to store and to use those. Bigger items, little ham radios, walkie-talkies. You can get these for $25-30 on Amazon. It really wouldn't hurt to have a few extra anyways. You can use them when people maybe come to your home to help. Maybe they're, working as a group to protect and defend. And you could also barter with them. One of the things that I did want to mention, and I'm not talking about gold and silver right now. That's not part of this video. I did a video yesterday on my Patreon channel talking about gold and silver from a preparedness perspective. So if you want to see that, you can go over there and join my Patreon channel. But one of the things that gets talked about a lot is ammo. Some people say it's fine to use ammunition for bartering. Other people say don't do it. And the reason is number one, that ammunition could be taken and turned around and used upon you. They may have a weapon. They just ran out of ammo, and they need ammo, and they come to you and they barter, and they get enough ammo so they can go out, get themselves loaded up, and come back and take your stuff. You know, these scenarios that people work out in their minds. I kind of fall somewhere in between. I think that ammo can be used as a bartering item, but should only ever be used with people that you know and trust, people part of your community, within your circle of trust. That should be the only way. You don't want people, strangers and stuff, people that you don't know, knowing what you have, especially when it comes to ammunition. And so you certainly just wouldn't want to do that. But if it's, you know, someone within your community, and they're like, hey, you know, I could use some more ammo. If you've got any to spare, I've got this, you know, food or whatever to barter with, that would be okay. And if you're doing that, keep it in small amounts, okay? You know, don't walk in with a big ammo can and start pulling, you know, boxes and boxes of ammo out. But, you know, small amounts that are kind of already bagged up or boxed up or something like that, because you just don't want it to be known that you just might happen to have 10, 15, 20, 30,000 rounds. You just don't want that known. It's all just part of operational security. So bartering should be something that you work on. It should be something that you do, but you do have to be careful, because bartering right now is going to be very different, or bartering now is very different than how it's going to be as things start to get worse, as people become more desperate, because out of desperation, people are more willing to do things that they really shouldn't do, because society is becoming less and less civilized. So always remember that. But certainly start setting aside stuff if you can. I understand some of you are like, man, I'm barely able to do the things, you know, get things acquired for my own self. And that's fine and understandable. But maybe you have a skill. Like I said, you know, you can make things. You can use your skill to trade your skill for something that they have that you need. Something that I have done over the years is I've learned to grow tobacco. And tobacco is one of those things that people are going to want when they can't have access to it, and not just for the smoking and the nicotine of it, but tobacco also has a lot of really great medicinal properties, and so many people just don't know that, and very few people grow it anymore. It's just something that big companies do. So look at those things that you can grow, that you can make, skill that you can develop, to further your bartering capabilities, because I think we're going to hit that point where people are bartering more and more often, a lot sooner than a lot of people think. It doesn't take a complete collapse for that to happen. All it takes is for them to say, well, now we all have the digital dollar, and that's what you have to use. And you're going to see a lot more people wanting to barter and trade. So start thinking about that and getting yourselves ready for that point, because it could be coming a lot sooner than you think. All right, folks, get your houses in order. Definitely. Prepare yourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thank you all for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.